Hello, I'm Mark Unkefer, president of the Montgomery County Republican Club, and welcome to Direct Line. And I am on with Dwight Patel and Charles Anthony. And Charles, normally when something really good, who you just won the primary in Congressional District 3, normally when there are situations like this, they say, congratulations, you're going to Disneyland, but we can't do that this day. So you're now you got a big campaign ahead of you, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
But you've been down this road before, and I think that really gives you an advantage. It certainly gave you, I think, a great advantage. You had a nice, convincing win in the primary. People have gotten to know you since last year. 2 years ago, obviously, the last election. I know you and I have talked, but I think you're having another shot at it. You really have had the experience of going through the election cycle once before. Tell me about what's going to be different this time.
Well, obviously this time, I don't know, almost 100 days there, nobody's gotten out. People haven't, everybody's worried about donations because they don't have enough money to donate. And
Right.
So that was very, very thin pickings there. But, I stayed in contact with folks. I sent out text messages through, there's a program called Google Voicemail, and it was free. So I encourage people to do that. Most people say that it'll let you send out 100 text messages a day for free. I never experienced that. Mostly it was around 50. I think one time I may have gotten up to 63, 73, whatever it was. But it's just safe to say you can get out approximately 50 messages a day. And I did that for well over 100 days. So I got out like 5,000 text messages.
Great.
And apparently 80% of those, I'm told, get read. And I did have people respond, hey, send me a yard sign or gave them my website for donations purposes, and it runs the full gamut, but people do respond to them.
That's great.
So how's it, what's your strategy to take on the most gerrymandered district in America? This is how interesting your district, Nicola Ambrose and Al Mendelson and yourself all are in the 3rd district, and you guys live a good 45 minutes away from each other, or to an hour, I should say, or more than an hour.
Correct.
And Annapolis is also in your district, I believe. Either Dirk is, I think Dirk's also in the 3rd district. No?
Yeah. Where's he over in Annapolis? Yeah, I think so. And also, did you ever hear of a place called Gibson Island?
Yes.
That's the 3rd congressional.
The home of Steve Shue.
Yeah. You go, oh, it's just amazing, and what people don't realize is, as the crow flies, but certainly as you drive, I've done this. It's probably 70 miles from north to south, from the southernmost point of the 3rd congressional district, which I live in. I'm maybe a half a mile from the southernmost point, right there. Well, Dwight, you know where I live.
Yeah.
And we go up to north of Towson, if that's considered north, and you start west around Owings Mills and snake your way over to Gibson Island, and right there in not Pasadena, but which Pasadena's in the 3rd too.
Yeah.
But also over to the eastern portion of Annapolis. And it's almost 70 miles by 70 miles. Those are land miles, not necessarily as a crow flies.
Yeah.
But, that's almost like 4,900 contiguous miles if you do the math. That's a tremendous, and I tell people, for me to make a commitment to come to a club or a meeting, it's anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to get there, depending on traffic and time back. So you're looking at potentially 3 hours, and plus the time you get to spend with the folks. It's a time commitment for me to get in and around the congressional district. And I always hear, well, what's somebody in Silver Spring got to do with the background of somebody up in Pasadena or Annapolis or Arbutus, you know, and Halethorpe, you know, and Baltimore City, because the 3rd Congressional District consists of the southeast portion of the 3rd Congressional District.
It's almost like they drew
southeast
this
portion.
district on purpose this way.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's amazing if you take towns like, I know people have heard of a little town called Laurel, Maryland. There's three congressmen that represent that town. There's another town called Burtonsville, which is probably a little smaller than Laurel. There are there's at least 2. I think there's 3 congressmen in that one. It's just ludicrous that
It's
this
like,
way.
our friend Pat
Yeah, I
Minotti.
was going to say what we really ought to do is help your campaign financially, and one of the things we ought to get done is to get you one of those amphibious vehicles, so you can go by water, and you can go but get a little boat that drives you, and then also a car, and that way you can get to your meeting.
One of those sea ducks, you know.
Sea ducks, right? That tourists have.
Yeah,
You know, I've actually ridden one of those in my Army days.
So you know how to drive one, right?
No, I don't know how to drive it, but I'm sure it'd be easy enough to adapt to it. But I have ridden in one, you know. So back in the early 70s, I sure did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way to go. But
so there are a lot of issues coming up with the House of Representatives. I mean, one of the things that's going on with them down there is they're planning on doing proxy voting. I don't know if you've been following this, but it is the argument that the Republicans are making is that it's completely unconstitutional that there are specific provisions in the Constitution that require physical presence on the part of the House of Representatives, and a lawsuit has been launched against the Democrats to prevent that from happening.
I think it's an interesting point the Democrats are taking up now, because they actually used that, Nancy Pelosi actually used that as a weapon against a congresswoman that was pregnant, about 18 months ago. Apparently they crossed each other, and the young freshman, I don't know if she's a freshman or sophomore, but she made her come in and vote, and the doctor had put her on bed rest at home, and of course they wanted to say, hey, you know, got a pregnant woman here, she's under doctor's orders, can she phone her vote in? And she said, absolutely not. It's required that they be here, and she will be here or she will be non-voted. You know, her vote will not count, period. Enough said. That's it. Now, when the shoe's on the other foot, you know, they want to come, oh, maybe something's wrong here. You know, it's kind of like we only have one standard to live by, and the standard is ours, and we make up the rules as we go along or as we see fit. So, you know, you can't run an organization that way.
It really undermines I think the faith that folks have in Congress when the speaker is able to basically tear up the rule book that's been in existence for such a long time and do something do something completely different. I mean, let's face it, there's no reason why those 435 members can't be in Washington, D.C. the way they're supposed to be. That's what the Republicans are prepared to do. They're certainly capable to do all the voting by, you know, with social distancing and whatever other processes that they need to do. It's anybody been in Capitol Hill knows it's a very large space. If they need to spread out the timing for the votes, they can do that as well and allow that to take place. It's really remarkable that they're trying to take this position.
And I also find it remarkable that if this is such a quote unquote crisis arena or crisis issue timeframe, why are they not assembling at the offsite assembly areas that are these underground bunkers that everybody's got to? No, seriously, you know, it's true. I mean, if this is that sensitive and they want to group them all together, that's what they're available. That's what they're there for. You know, the judicial's got one, you know, the executive office has got one, and legislature's got one. I mean, there's no reason for them not to be at work.
Right.
Well, actually, I think I know what it is, Charles. A lot of these people are finding Washington's not that much of a fun town when all the restaurants, all the lobbyists, all the parties are not happening. It's pretty much, they may as well, stay in there. Like, I mean, if you're from a rural district, some of the, or these Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, yeah, I can have more fun in San Francisco eating $15 pints of ice cream.
Well, they're actually pretty well. That's okay. Yeah, out of her own out of her own freezer.
Yeah, that's
yeah. It's a fascinating thing that they're out of town and not prepared to vote. It is an interesting contrast with the debate that we're having about the location of the Republican National Convention. So here you have this contrast of Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is. Again, we'll see what happens to courts. The courts are very reluctant to get into the specific rules of the House, but they also have this constitutional issue. So you have this position of Nancy Pelosi ripping up the rules that requires presence. At the same time, the Republicans are pressing ahead, demanding the ability to have a convention that's in person with far more people than there are in Congress. And basically getting pushback from the governor of North Carolina, who's saying, "Oh, we can't make those kinds of assurances."
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Charles.
I was going to say, it's always been my thought that there are I won't say workarounds, but there are backup systems. They're not being utilized. Mm-hmm. And you can't just sit there and say, hey, we're not going to utilize this because we don't want to, or because we're the organization that's in power. Processes are in there. The systems are there to be utilized and should be utilized. I mean, maybe we go in there and we find out and we find out that's an inadequate design. But how would you know that if you don't actually go in there and use it? Right. They have plans periodically where they'll have somebody, whether it's the president or speaker, they go through simulations, but, there's no simulation like the real thing. And that's when you test these systems.
Well, again, we very specifically with the COVID know how to do social distancing and all that. And they ought to be able to do it in the context of Congress without any problem. And that's obviously taking a very high threshold in terms of avoiding risk. It just seems to me that they don't want to do their job.
Yes, and that brings up a point that I think was touched upon. That why doesn't the president say just go ahead and dismiss them? I mean, if they're not going to be here, why should they be drawing a salary? If you guys want to take 4 months off, go ahead. We'll keep 4 months of your salary here and see you when you get back.
You probably would have some challenges in being able to implement that, but I take your point. I mean, if they're not willing to do their job, they did have that unemployment provision, right?
Right.
So maybe what they ought to do, if they don't want to show up to vote, they should be given the opportunity to claim unemployment and take whatever the hell that is, rather than I won't put you on the spot, but what's the salary? Is $180,000?
It's a little under 200.
Yeah,
plus or minus. It's a little under 200. I'm not really sure, because a lot of those jobs have base salary plus compensation packages and kind of. So I don't know I don't have a full view of what the compensation package is like.
Well, we want you to be able to draw that salary, but we particularly want to have you join Andy Harris as a Republican in the House of Representatives. Right?
If you win, you're probably going to be commuting every day to Capitol Hill and back, correct?
There's no reason
in DC.
Yeah, just go right down here to the Silver Spring Metro Station and just catch it in. Yeah, I've done that before when I worked down at the Pentagon or. Yeah.
And what's great is I don't know what's changed, but I know when Governor Ehrlich was in Congress, he went back and forth from Arbutus to Washington every night. I hate to use this person as an example, but Babs Mikulski used to go back and forth every day. Paul Sarbanes used to go back and forth. You remember they used to do those commercials? Sarbanes in his Grand Marquis.
Yeah.
He'd drive and he goes, I come home every night, But his son seems to, or is it his nephew? Is John his son or nephew?
I checked on that because that question's come up several times, and I'm told it's his son. I've had more than
he has to live in DC. He can't do the hike, which is funny, because it's so far away.
So let me ask you, Charles, when you get elected, and we're going to say when, what committees do you want to serve on and why?
Um, right off the bat, I'd certainly do the military, the VA. I think the judicial would be an interesting one, or the intelligence committee would be the ones I'd certainly look at the most. Those are, I guess, what they call A-listers. You know, they group those committees like A, B, and C. But those are probably ones that would interest me, as you know, as they all would. But you know,
Armed services would be right up your alley, and it of course would be right up the alley of your district that has so many facilities either in it or immediately nearby. I have to look at a map, but we have
correct.
a lot of folks that serve that way, and obviously also a lot of veterans. So those would be really good choices for you.
Yeah, you know, I get my being a retired. Well, you know, most of you know the story. I got drafted for Vietnam and out of high school in '71. I never made it to Vietnam, but yeah, I ended up getting my commission. Went to the Medical Service Corps, and I made a career out of it. Basically, went from private to lieutenant colonel. And but the healthcare administration, hospital administration's been my background, and I had a subspecialty in medical logistics. So all these procurement issues that the president's been talking about on TV, I mean, we experienced them in the original Desert Shield, Desert Storm, which was back in 1990. I was the property management officer for Walter Reed when I was there on Georgia Avenue as a major. But yeah, and of course my healthcare is through the VA. So, you know, there isn't anybody, well, there might be somebody, but you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that, that knows more about that VA system than I do from the patient point of view.
And one of the things that people expect from their Maryland representative is really good constituent service. So somebody who's been through the process and has firsthand knowledge is really in a good position to be able to step in and provide that.
Well, you're correct. One of the things that we have talked about, because, you know, the first time, and I tell people, you know, well, you and I actually talked, you know, you were the first person I came to when I made this decision, when you were, I guess you were the chair for Montgomery County at the time. And, you know, I mean, you were very honest and said, you know, don't expect much the first time around, but, you know, you got to plan for the second time and the third time. And I said, okay. And I did take that to heart. And so I've got a business plan developed. And when I look at people that have ran against the Sarbanes family, because they've basically been in power for 64 years, nobody's ever ran twice. And I found that just astounding. And certainly if nobody's ran twice, they haven't ran a third time. But you know, I got to thinking, how do you go around to the different areas within the 3rd Congressional District to get representation? Now, I'm told, and I haven't seen this, that we get 3 offices throughout the metropolitan or throughout the congressional district, and I'll strategically locate those. But, you know, really, when you stop and think about it, you know, there isn't any reason that like 2 weekends out of the month or 2 Saturdays, you couldn't have a rally somewhere within this state. I mean, it's only, you know, like we were just talking about the distance. I mean, you're talking maybe an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half in a worst case scenario to get somewhere. Right. And, you know, you can rotate those around. Now, I do have a veteran that I am bringing on by the name of Ronnie Wheeler. And he is a top-notch Air Force enlisted retiree. And he's going to run my VA program, because there's no reason that the VA doesn't have a better outreach program towards the state of Maryland, because we got one. Matter of fact, we have in the state of Maryland, the VA up here in Baltimore has the only neurosurgery service on the East Coast. So if you're a veteran and you need neurosurgery services, they fly you into Baltimore. Or they'll do what they call an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, where they can farm it out to a local healthcare system or your local military, active duty military. But even at that, it's limited. But you know, these kind of things need to be known, and why people are on the streets and stuff. I mean, that's what they've got, you know. And to me, that's their public relations. They need to get out there and start recruiting actively to get these people into a system. And I don't see it happen. I mean, I've been up in Congressional District 7 and 3 and a little bit of 2. And, you know, you see people on the corner, I'm a vet, help, or whatever the case might be. Everybody's begging for money or food. And, but I don't see anybody from the services up there interceding or providing assistance to those folks. But
Okay.
anyway.
I think that's an excellent point. I think we've all seen that a lot of people who serve end up having to pay a real price that they pay during the rest of their lives, and we really have an opportunity to do a better job of providing for them because of the challenges they end up facing.
Right. I see a lot of people now with the newer technology that they're used, such as you've got artillerymen and tankers. The chemicals now that they use in the round itself, it has such what they call overpressure.
Right.
You know, you see your World War II movies, you know, and they're doing 105s or whatever. The what they call the overpressure coming out of those instruments or those weapons is not near what it is today. So if you got an artillery piece and let's say it's a 155 or then and it shoots 15 miles, well, you have to have a lot more pressure than you did to shoot it 5 miles down the range, you know. So, and when you do that, there's a lot of that overpressure that affects neurological disorders. And that's where a lot of your, what is that? They call that I can't think right now, but anyway, but that's where a lot of that comes from.
Now, did you have any debates last time around?
Did not. They were setting up one for the 5th congressional district. Excuse me, the 3rd congressional district there with the young Republicans. No, I take that back. No, they had set up several, but the 3rd congressional district was one that they had elected not to do. And I had called them and asked them about it. What's her name? Sophia.
Oh, no, this was in the primary. I mean, looking forward for the general.
Oh, in the general, in the previous. Yep. No. As a matter of fact, do you remember Wayne Smith? Well, Wayne and I talked about that, and he said, "You'll never get Sarbanes on the stage." Right. And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He says they got to protect him. He's basically has no charisma, no personality.
You know what we used to do in the old days when a candidate wouldn't debate? We did this on a couple of races in New York. We get a life-size cutout of their opponent, and back in those days we used a little tape recorder. And when we do the debate, it'd be it'd be something like the Republican Women's Club or something like Nassau County or something like that.
Right.
We'd have somebody push a play on the tape recorder. We'd ask them, "So what are your stance on this?" And then
one of the real opportunities with the technology is that, of course, we don't know. I mean, if he's taking advantage of quote proxy voting that they're doing, we don't know where the hell he is. He could be down in the Caribbean someplace, right? But anyway, there's an opportunity to conduct a debate like this on Zoom, and I would think there are plenty of organizations that would be willing to host something like that.
Hey, John Sarbanes, you have an invitation to come here anytime you want.
Anyway,
yeah.
But it would be helpful to get invitation from those groups that would be hard for him to turn down. I think a lot of direct line, and we're really an important media, but chances are he could turn that invitation down. But for example, here in Montgomery County, 21, MyMC Media released that piece of, that's in the district, and obviously the other counties as well. There's probably other vehicles where they're probably going to think, you know what, it's a good idea to host a debate. We're willing to do it, and they may be doing it in some of the other districts. You should get on the horn and see if they're willing to get them to do that.
I think the Maryland Chamber of Commerce should sponsor a debate, or the Veterans Associations.
When in the last election cycle, when I was talking with Wayne, and he had mentioned that I guess Sarbanes League of Women Voters did have a debate during the 2016 election, and he said he said it was really kind of a waste because what they did was they went in and brought in multiple people. It wasn't like a one-on-one. Ask all the difficult questions to the other people. They cherry picked answers and gave them to him that were maybe one sentence, two sentences long, and he spent little time being engaged because everybody else wanted to take up time about what they were doing, what they would do, and boasting on themselves. And then, of course, next thing you know, the hour is up and goodbye. Thank you all for coming. And, he maybe commanded 3.5 minutes of the 60 minutes, or whatever the case. So it was set up. He said, you could tell it was really obviously rigged. So he said, you'll probably never get him on anything. So, but, if it works out that way, that'd be great. But I'd stipulate, if you're going to do that, and I would throw it out there, just have it as a one-on-one. And there's no reason that the same question shouldn't be asked to two people. Don't cherry pick answers. So after 14 years in power, plus Daddy being in there for 50 years, they ought to be able to throw in some grapefruit softballs out there, so he can take a swing and hit them.
Somebody ought to help them practice. Well, but I'll tell you, obviously this technology, using it so can create an audience that would be a lot larger than you normally get for debates, and allow for more give and take, more one-on-one. That would be very helpful. So Dwight, what do you say? Well, we should get an invitation out to
I think we should
invite the congressman to come on, and we'd be happy to host. Charles, I assume you'll accept, right?
Sure.
Absolutely. We knew that, right?
We will have our executive director we'll have Jackie sent out an invite.
We'll send an invitation, and don't take this the wrong way, but we'll do all 3 congressional districts. We'll get David Trone on with Neil Parrott, and we'll get
Gregory Cole and Jamie Raskin.
Gregory Cole, with Jamie Raskin. So I think that would be a great plan.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be a good lineup for 3 separate programs, and let's go for it.
Be good television, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Good video. I guess that's the standard.
Charles,
for this.
I'm gonna bring on our next guest, so you can just say hello to Jerry Cave. Jerry is, I don't know, you know Jerry.
Jerry, how are you doing?
Hey, caveman.
Charles, great having you
on.
on.
Yourself.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless, and let's
caveman's in a resort somewhere.
Keep on keeping on,
Thank you. Great. Congratulations once
Thank
again.
you, Charles.
All right, Mark. See you later, Dwight.
Take
care, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hey, Jerry. Oh, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah, you need to unmute yourself. Jerry, you're on mute.
I have everyone here.
So where in this is like, where in Karma, what was it? Where in the world is, anyway, where in the world is Jerry Cave?
Once we get him unmuted.
Yeah. I wish we could just unmute from here. But you can hear us? We can't hear you.
Yeah, me. I can send him a request to unmute. I can't actually unmute him. He has to do that.
This is the
this is the pitfall of the Zoom culture, right? You're always in the meeting and there's the one person who doesn't realize that they're muted.
Yeah. Normally, I should send them a note that there's certain topics that we normally mute Dwight when he gets into.
Yes. Dwight, you're gonna have to give him the dial-in info.
Yeah, he's got that.
Okay.
You have the dial-in?
Yep. Let's see.
All right.
Hold on. Let me give it to you, Jerry.
Yes. A whole 12 people are watching.
Right.
Yeah.
This is scintillating television. Think how much more we would have if we had a debate, though. I think that would be really
interesting.
So my question to you is, where is
I think
Jerry Cave? That doesn't look like that doesn't look like Louisiana to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in probably in I want to say he's probably in Florida somewhere.
Yep. Yes.
Let's see.
Well, I suspect we're losing our audience right now.
We could talk about. Let's just talk about a couple things about. I think the convention should be in Florida, frankly.
Okay.
Ryan, any thoughts on that?
Well, we're disappointed for Ryan because Charlotte was much more convenient to Virginia Tech.
True.
Yes, Charlotte was very convenient location-wise, which is unfortunate for me. Let me see if I can send this as a Facebook message to Jerry. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that had to get changed around. I don't think I'm going to be able to go for any part, but I don't know what the situation will be with allowing guests to begin with, even. So it might not have even
There's
happened.
a lot of rumors swirling around on the whole.
Well, it's made worse by people claiming that they know things, and this is how it works with everything, right? There was a Roanoke Times article today claiming to have inside information about what decision Virginia Tech's going to announce on the 8th with regards to reopening, and they had such a credible source that it was unnamed. Jerry's in the waiting room. Okay, here we are. Let's unmute him.
Hi,
Jerry Cave, how are you?
I'm great, man. Nice to see you. Thank you.
There we go.
So, what part of Florida are you in? You look like you're in Naples.
I am in Orange Beach, Alabama.
Alabama.
That part of Florida.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's a hideously ugly part of the world,
It's beautiful.
as you can see.
Is that Mobile Bay behind you?
And the weather is great. And it's kind of, it's really interesting. I came down here like 8 million years ago in college, and this place was a barren wasteland of beautiful natural scenery. God, what a waste. Now it's covered in condos and houses, prosperity and enjoyment everywhere.
And just think, back then, Jerry, you could have spent $20,000 and bought like a small city in that. part.
Believe me. Yeah, I'd have made a fortune. But what's interesting is they did a lot of development down here, which they won't do in the Chesapeake Bay and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives people a lot of enjoyment and throws off a lot of income.
Mm-hmm.
Just another way in which Alabama is way ahead of you poor Hicks in Maryland.
That's true. So, Jerry, do you have any preferences on the convention? Florida, Texas, Las Vegas?
Well, it bothers me a lot that it's not in North Carolina, because I think part of that is to help hold North Carolina in the election. And I hope nobody in North Carolina fails to vote for Donald Trump because of this. Yeah. But I think, the Democrats are very clever, doing everything they can to stop Donald Trump, legal and illegal.
This is Democrat Roy Cooper. You know something? What's his name? Governor McCrory never would have done this, and Governor Forrest will never do something like this. So all you folks in North Carolina, who are upset that the convention has been moved, vote for Dan Forrest this fall.
So that's going to be the slogan for Dan Forrest for North Carolina governor is Dan Forrest would not have moved the Republican National Convention. Vote for me.
Amen.
There we go. That'll get all.
Well, that's the challenge about North Carolina is that it is 45% on one side and 45% on the other, and the fight for that 10% in the middle is just absolutely dogged. It's a very closely competed state.
And as Governor McCrory, we had him on, who was also the mayor of Charlotte, was telling us there's a lot of people from New York, New Jersey, Maryland, moving down into North Carolina, like the Raleigh Triangle area, which is kind of turning North Carolina purple, unfortunately.
That's happening even more. I know I've talked to real estate agents in the Carolinas, and they had a big, strong start. Then the COVID slowed it, and now it's picking up with a lot of people from New Jersey, the Northeast. They're like, I've had it, and they're moving down south.
I wish we could, if we could have a little bit of an educational thing going on. They come down to these red states from blue states. They go, oh, beautiful roads. Look how efficient everything is. But they keep voting like they're living in New Jersey or New York or, anywhere, or Massachusetts. They keep
Look what
voting
they've
them.
done to Colorado.
I know.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
you know,
Texas
Look what
even
they did
is
to
at risk.
California.
I mean, my beloved Brevard County in Florida, where all the levels of power are controlled by Republicans, knock on wood. You know, I've
Well-
had three neighbors move down to that area, and I'm like, you guys aren't allowed to vote down there. You know that, right? You know, you got to wait 5 years.
Now, going back to the 2016 campaign, one of the reasons we knew we were going to keep North Carolina and Florida was that we had anticipated that the black vote would go back to normal versus the high percentage that would turn out for Obama. And we saw that in the midterms. And really something that people haven't brought up is that Biden is not polling strong with the black community. He's probably weaker with the black community in this polling than any Democratic POTUS candidate in a long time. Like 79, 80% is what I heard. And I think that's a big reason a lot of the stuff is going on, but that is a big part of North Carolina. And if Donald Trump can take the black community and get them to vote less Democrat, that means a lot, not only in 2020, but down the line.
Yeah. And even going from 5 to 10%, the Democrats rely so much on these identity politics blocks having almost blind loyalty, where even that small of a change, where yes, you still only have 10%, but even that starts to beat a card at the bottom of the house that causes it all to crumble. So really, there's a lot of opportunity.
Well, Ryan, you're wise beyond your years, because not only does the branding of the Republicans as racist cost us that huge swath of the black vote, many of whom are culturally and financially conservative, but even it does so the same thing in the Hispanic vote and in the Asian vote. And the Asian people I've talked to are more conservative culturally and financially than I am. But they vote Democrat because of this negative branding, which is pure bunkum.
Yeah. Now, I think there's actually a very big opportunity for the president with recent events, and obviously want to preface this, but anyone who saw the video of what happened to George Floyd, that is terrible, but the reaction to it has gone much beyond the original events, and it's now becoming, they've gotten distracted from their mission, and now it seems to have devolved into a lot more of looting and rioting and a lot less of talking about results. And I think a lot of people who actually live in those neighborhoods are going to start getting fed up with it. So I think messaging around that, if done carefully, can be very effective. I mean, this is a largely religious part of the population. To point out that we now live in a society where you can get arrested for going to a church to worship, but not to go burn it down. I mean, what kind of country is this? And I don't think a lot of people in our inner cities are going to be very happy with that when it's pointed out to them. It just needs to be messaged properly.
I mean, let's look at Baltimore after Freddie Gray. Remember the mayor's response: give them space. They burned down a CVS, and now there's no CVS there.
Yeah. Well, there's a balance to be had, because there's also the culpability of honestly, the mayors of a lot of these cities for the whatever abuses are taking place. So whether you're talking about Baltimore and the problems with the Baltimore Police Department, or Minneapolis with apparently the problems of the Minneapolis Police Department, these aren't created by the federal government. They are created by mayors and legislatures and governors that are in those jurisdictions.
And a lot of these blue states have systematically basically deconstructed the death penalty. So you can't use the death penalty, which is the ultimate punishment. And I think this cop should get the death penalty, quite frankly.
Well, yeah, whether you go down the death penalty, and actually, I'm not sure about that. And I think one of the interesting things that came out of Baltimore is that there's a political tendency to overcharge, to try and get a higher, to basically get premeditation and what have you. And that ends up meaning that police officers get off, because that's really not the charge that they were. So I'd be careful about asking for that, because that's usually used.
No, but but I think the death penalty needs to be a weapon in the arsenal of prosecutors.
But could I make a little different? I mean, whether or not you go on those extreme situations, the other piece is we have public employee unions in these cities.
That'll
We
protect
see
you,
that
the
with
bad
teachers. We see that with the police department, and we see an inability of, because the management control has been bargained away, and the unions in effect control the situation, where you don't have the accountability for bad cops or bad teachers or bad whatever that there really ought to be.
Listen, there's bad cops on both sides. In Minneapolis a couple of years ago, a black policeman killed a white Australian woman. Nobody rioted. The guy got convicted. I mean, the Democratic Party, because they got nothing else to run on, is trying to make America look like Bull Connors is still in charge.
Yeah.
And it's all branding against America, traditional values, the GOP, and Trump. And all of this is utter nonsense. This is not 1964 anymore. And Ryan, you really nailed it when you talked about the messaging. And the messaging is really simple. I saw one of the videos of this obviously poor elderly black lady was just beside herself because she said they burned the dollar store. Now, maybe you've never been in one, but I got to tell you something, I have. That is where poor people get their food because it is dirt cheap. When they burn that, that woman's like, I have nowhere to shop. These people, the Antifa people and the small group of looters are ruining the communities for these poor people who are still voting for the Democrats who foment this type of thing. It's insanity, but the Republican Party needs to get up off their butt and speak to this.
And furthermore, Jerry, it also comes down to this, okay? Here's something real quick. You're a student of history, Jerry. Lester Maddox, Bull Connor, Fordyce, what do they all have in common? They were all Democrats, and they're
what the Democrats did when they couldn't play that side of the race card, they flipped it over and they're playing this one.
Yeah, Governor Rockefeller never did, was never, standing in the schoolhouse doors, keeping children from voting. That was a Democrat.
I think the students of history would observe that the Ku Klux Klan was the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party.
Birth of a Nation, who celebrated that? Woodrow Wilson.
Listen, let's look at today. The mayors of a lot of these cities, the police chiefs, a plurality of the police officers, they're black.
Yeah.
What are they? This is absolutely absurd. But what's amazing is that they get away with it. The Democratic Party and the left are unbelievably brilliant at branding and campaigning and making this stuff up. Of course, the compliant media endorses it and gives validity to it. But the real problem is that you don't hear any black leaders, any serious big Democrat leaders come out and tell people to stop rioting. And worse, you don't have any of the GOP leaders condemning them for their silence.
Well, let me push back a little bit on that, Jerry, because I think we've all seen enough videos that the rioting is not, this is not African American. I mean, there's a mix of people. So you look at the store videos in Georgetown and you'll see.
Look at the video from Bethesda yesterday.
Or Bethesda. This is a lot of people across. This has been a multicultural riot that people
Jerry,
have
your
taken
old
advantage
neighbors
of.
from Bethesda were rioting yesterday.
And the worst part about it is that, I mean,
a rioting. You mean they didn't put their chewing gum in the trash can? They put it on the street. No, but Mark, you're getting off the point. The point is the black leaders are not saying anything to people to stop the rioting. But neither are the white leaders in the Democratic Party. None of them are. And the Republican leaders are so gutless that they don't get on there and condemn them for it.
Well, the rioting is across the board. So I think everybody has got to stand up and be against the rioting. I would really caution when you look at the footage to suggest that it is primarily African Americans who are rioting.
And I didn't say that.
It is broad. It is lots of people are taking an opportunity to engage in stuff they really shouldn't, and it ought to stop.
I think the bigger thing, and
there's nothing inconsistent about what you're saying and I'm saying.
Right. Okay.
I love you, man, but you cannot put words in my mouth. I didn't say it's only the black community, but it does disproportionately affect the black community when these things happen in cities because they're closing stores in their community. They're not closing any stores in Bethesda, man.
No.
But the bottom line is
No,
nobody
but they're boarding up stores. No way,
speaking out.
They
Jerry.
boarded up the Apple store.
They're
in Bethesda.
boarding up stores on Bethesda Row.
Temporarily, they're not going to close them. Target, CVS, they've closed stores.
Yeah.
They didn't close them in Bethesda.
I mean, in Wheeling, you saw. I mean, Target says they're going to be not reopening some of their stores. And why are they going after Target? I know that's it's kind of like
and Target's a
name.
very liberal brand, which is kind of ironic. But
I know it's funny.
you know,
it's because are they trying to punish them because they're Minnesota-based?
to kind of get a little bit back on topic, I think the way the Republican Party should respond to it is, listen, all politics is local. The nationalization of our politics has disproportionately hurt the GOP. We need to point out that all these people that are tweeting out and sharing Instagram stories saying Black Lives Matter and are supposedly engaged now and doing all these things should actually channel that energy doing something productive, like voting for different people and who's in charge. And who's in charge of all of these cities and running all of these city councils and in the mayor's office and overseeing the police forces? It's all Democrats in almost every single one of these cities. So that's how you actually affect change.
Well, wait a minute, Ryan. You're not being fair to the Democrats. They've only been in charge of those cities with a complete, absolute authority for 3 times longer than you have been alive.
I know. It's not long enough for them to turn it around, apparently.
I mean, what was the last time
your
Minneapolis?
lifetime.
I mean, when was the last time Minneapolis had a mayor? It was before even I was born.
I think we should be fair. Minneapolis does not have all Democrats in leadership. That is a lie. They do have one member of the Green Party, so I guess they have some bipartisan representation there on their city council, unlike us here in Montgomery County, who have one-party rule.
Yeah.
Okay, with that.
All
go ahead, Jerry.
All jesting aside, I've thought about this because I have a friend in New Orleans who does the crime cameras. And they've been very successful. And what he found out is when you have crime cameras in a part of town, do you know what gets solved? Everything. The neighborhood gets better. It gets cleaned up. The crime goes away. People move in. Families move in. Tax dollars move in. The schools get better. But unfortunately, some of those people will be middle class and might vote Republican. I believe that the Democrats keep these cities poor by making sure there's lots of crime because that keeps them poor, and they keep buying that nonsense rhetoric to vote Democrat. It's not, they don't need to do it to maintain control of cities, but it gives them much more power throughout states like Maryland, where after a statewide candidate comes out of Baltimore County and Prince George's, he's like 200,000 or 300,000 votes behind, and you need a genius like Larry Hogan to win that situation. I used to think it was collateral damage by Democratic bad policies. I don't think there's anything collateral about it anymore.
That's true. And Jerry, it also comes down to we have a lot of these, like Congressman King, when I worked on his campaign, he said that is the one thing liberal Democrats fear the most is middle-class minorities and when they get home ownership, they're gonna not as be inclined to be for property ownership creates Republicans, and that is the one thing.
Listen, the Democrats couldn't be an extreme left-wing party like Ted Kennedy, which is what they are today.
Yeah,
they'd have to be like Jack Kennedy, which we could all live with, were it not for this branding of minorities that vote for Democrats regardless of policy.
Very true.
They're good, man. They are really good at this game.
They wrote the book on Flim Flam.
Hey, Mark, how are we doing on time?
Well, I think we're coming up at 20 after 8 o'clock, so maybe we get to parting shots or parting comments.
Jerry, you want to give us your final thoughts?
Well, I usually like to go last.
Okay.
You can go last.
To anchor it. So why don't we save that and you guys go, and then I'll do my best to make you look good.
I think we'll have Dwight go first because he always seems to think he'll upstage people, then comes out with the worst one.
Get the mute button ready.
Haha. But here's the thing: I was having a conversation today about NASA. We're back in space, and I just want to say thank you, Vice President Pence, for making NASA a priority. Thank you, President Trump, for standing by Vice President Pence as we make NASA a priority. America is back in space. We're no longer using the Russian Uber system to get astronauts to the International Space Station.
Russian Uber system.
We're much safer capsule. Private industry.
That's the
partnership
best
with
part
Elon
about it.
Musk's.
Private industry.
Yeah, and it's not. And the Dragon capsule, all this process costs less than one shuttle flight.
Right.
And so America's back in space, and that's my parting shot.
Okay.
And it's a good thing.
I'll follow that one up. I'm going to say something that I said privately to Dwight earlier, and that for the first time ever, I think we've nominated 2 engineers for Congress from the Maryland Republican Party. So I know Dwight would be a big fan of that, and our colleague Marcus Alzona and a few others. But, just like apparently Elon Musk coming out more of a Republican saying that we should liberate California and how he's going to stand in defiance of them closing his Tesla factories, we need more Republican engineers. So
Elon Musk for governor.
yes, there we go. Mark?
Well, yesterday I had the honor to be elected as a Trump delegate for District 8. So for whatever percentage of those voters, thank you very much for that. I have no idea where we're going to go, but I will say I'm looking forward to voting in person and not with proxy voting the way certain Democratic members of Congress seem to think is an appropriate way to do it. So now Dwight will be joining me from the state at-large delegation. We're looking forward to voting in person. Jerry?
Number one, I want to tell you that Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and the left are the most despicable group of people I've ever met because they are killing policemen. The only thing that keeps chaos from overrunning our poor, less advantaged Americans is the police, and they are killing them, assassinating them. Number two, deep state, impeachment, the lockdown, none of it worked. So now they're trying the riots. And here's the best one of all. Gee, you can't go to church, you can't have a group, but you can all get together in Bethesda. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The lockdown, this whole nine yards of this, we've been had.
Hey, Jerry, I'm going to go to the Cheesecake Factory, say I'm protesting and demand they serve me indoors. I'm going to say it's a protest.
Okay. I think that was the
That's
best.
got to be the last word right there. What do you
Okay.
say, Ryan?
Yeah, we're going to call it an episode. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next
you.
week for
Thanks,
Direct
Jerry,
Line,
you're a
and then
lifesaver today.
Friday for Dr. Politics.